In March 2025, BYD made a potentially groundbreaking announcement.
The company announced a new technology claiming it can charge an electric vehicle almost as quickly as it takes to fill a gas car.
An EV platform capable of charging up to 250 miles of range in just 5 minutes.
Wow, that is actually very impressive. Depending on whether you have a fast charger or not, like let's say you use a standard outlet in America, you could potentially be charging an electric vehicle for hours at a time. And so being able to charge in 5 minutes is a huge difference.
Less than 2 weeks later, the Chinese EV giant reported its annual 2024 sales of $107 billion, a 29% increase from the year prior.
That is pretty good, but not surprising. BYD, if you're not familiar with them, is basically the current perceived frontrunner of electric vehicles globally at this point in time, and that they are one of the factors to why there is less demand for Teslas, though obviously for political reasons and other reasons, there are additional reasons why that could be the case. But BYD is basically very quickly overtaking some of the features and functionality in other electric vehicles like Tesla, and they're also coming in at a way cheaper price point. And so people have been keeping their eye on them in the automotive market and especially the electric vehicle market for the last couple of years.
And more than 9% higher than American rival Tesla. Shares of BYD are up more than 40% in 2025.
The rally in BYD stock, which has hit a record high.
In 2024, BYD sold about as many EVs as Tesla did worldwide, and that's only about half of BYD's total volume.
Tesla deliveries worse than expected at just over 336,000 deliveries in the first quarter.
BYD is now bigger than Nissan, bigger than Honda, bigger than Ford. So you've got coming out of China, not just a low-cost EV maker, but an innovative, aggressive, competitive company. And this is what keeps executives in the...
Yeah, it is somewhat a shame that you can't get these in America. I see why they probably wouldn't be. They also have autonomous vehicle features. And so I'm sure that I'm not sure whether it's a ban in America or if China just isn't entering the US market. But we have seen how US policy has been basically a little bit more aggressive towards Chinese autonomous vehicle makers, because you gather a lot of data through an autonomous vehicle, because usually you have cameras all the way around as well as other sensors in that vehicle. And so imagine if there were thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of these cars, basically with like 9 or 10 cameras basically going in 360 around a car, and that they're driving all the way through every major city in America. That is potentially a risk to the safety of Americans. At least that's my understanding, is the perceived risk for these government policies. And this is what they're trying to avoid, which is they don't want other countries to have so much knowledge that they can use, and especially a country that we have tenuous relationships with.
The West up at night.
Though it is a startling achievement, CNBC spoke to a few researchers who explain why this new announcement may not be quite as revolutionary as it sounds. Nevertheless, the evidence is mounting. Chinese EV makers are leaving everybody else in the dust.
They won before this announcement. So
yeah, this is where I agree. I think they were saying that they were looking into that announcement, but again, for reference, basically they're beating Tesla in pretty much everything, like price point, features, autonomous vehicle driving is better, charging might be better. Like, they're winning on so many areas, even if they're not on one or two. It really doesn't change the narrative in my perspective, from my understanding of how good these vehicles are. But again, I haven't driven one, I haven't seen one of them in action, so some of that could just be marketing or other statements. So feel free to take that with a grain of salt. It is a shame that we can't have them in America for the previous reasons that I had mentioned, just because this would probably be great for competition within the US. It's becoming so large in China that Tesla is basically going to be pulling out likely in China if they haven't already. And it's putting pressure on Tesla in other countries abroad, because wherever these cars are available, basically they're starting to push out Tesla vehicles. And so having cars like this in America that could be used for competition in the market, generally I think is good, obviously, but I'm not really too well versed in country level defense for military purposes, so I can't really say here or there whether or not the risk is real for those vehicles being here, but it is a shame from a purely capitalistic perspective that there is basically a high quality, cheap good that exists in the world that we can't have in America. And so we're inadvertently sort of under competing in our market today.
And it's just adding more salt to the wound.
BYD sold about 100,000 fully electric vehicles in 2018. Just 6 years later, that number was over 1.7 million. It produced...
Yeah, that's quite a bit of growth, and this is where they've really been coming out of, well, nowhere in my perspective, but they have grown very, very quickly in the recent years.
more EVs than Tesla for the first time in 2024. Its total sales, including hybrids, make it now one of the world's 10 largest automakers.
When Western automakers talk about an existential threat coming out of China, they're definitely talking about this company called BYD.
But geographic expansion and sales volume are only part of the Chinese juggernaut's story.
Up until very recently, BYD's core DNA was low cost.
In just 5 or 6 years, BYD launched a thin and efficient line of lithium iron phosphate batteries, an EV platform. It ended all of its internal combustion vehicle production, cut EV production costs down to the point where they were cheaper than gas cars, and launched a driver assistance system for the mass market.
BYD has this thing called a technology fish pond. They have, 800,000 employees, and how many of those are engineers? I don't know. But tinkering with these technologies over many number of years, and at a certain point in time, it's almost like grabbing one of these fishes out of this fish pond.
They have scale. They make some of the best batteries in the world. They have cars that are priced from $10,000 to $230,000. I mean, across the board, they check all the boxes.
The 5-minute charging battery system is just the latest fish to be plucked from the pond. On paper, if this works, it blows competitors out of the water.
I'm not sure if I was following that analogy. Maybe if you were, you can share your perspective in the comments below. I think what they were saying is basically like, once you have all these people, it's easier and easier for, I guess, one of these fish. I'm assuming this implies ideas in this case, or advancements, are kind of what's getting easier and easier to get because you have all these folks in close proximity to each other and they're all working towards the same goal. I don't think I've heard that term before, but I believe that there's a similar concept for Silicon Valley as an example of there's a lot of businesses that are there. And so if you need chips or you need particular things, there's a good chance that somebody makes that like down the road from you. And so having a lot of engineers there that are potentially cross-pollinating ideas and have easy access to other companies that are potentially doing auxiliary things with that technology can lead to faster and faster innovation, and why some of these things end up clustering around each other. And so this is what I'm interpreting from this analogy that they're describing.
Before BYD made this announcement, we were talking about 400 kilowatt charging, 600 kilowatt charging, a 5C charging. And then those were already super fast. And then BYD comes out with these just out of these world specs.
Rivals outdone by this achievement include Tesla, whose sales have fallen in China as well as elsewhere around the world. Tesla's Model Y can charge at a maximum rate of 250 kilowatts, adding up to 169 miles of charge in 15 minutes. BYD says it can deliver 248 miles in a third of that time. Apart from simply outdoing competitors, the company has reached a critical benchmark which many believe is necessary for EVs becoming mainstream.
It will win over a lot of doubters, a lot of skeptics. A lot of people today who drive gasoline-powered cars go, no, I'd never go electric until they can assure me that I'll be able to fill up in the same amount of time as it takes for my current car, which is at the gas station.
That said, there are a few reasons why it's important to keep this in perspective.
I am skeptical about their 5 minutes promise, and I want to see more data on what do they mean by that.
Two things influence how fast you can charge an EV: the speed of the charger and what the car can accept. You need both. In the US, the fastest chargers are DC fast, which carry a maximum 350 kilowatt charge, about a third of the 1,000 kilowatts BYD is promising. Some Tesla superchargers are 350 kilowatts, as are chargers from other providers. These tend to be less plentiful than slower ones. Only about 22% of all chargers in the US are this way. But the car itself also has to have a platform that can accept a fast charge. This is what this forthcoming BYD platform is. One of the fastest available in the US is the Lucid Air, which can charge up to 200 miles of range in just 12 minutes at a DC fast charger, thanks to a more than 900-volt platform, about 100 volts shy of BYD's. Cars from the Hyundai Motor Group have an 800-volt platform, which enables them to charge from 10% to 80% in as little as 18 to 20 minutes. The Tesla Model Y can accept a 250 kilowatt charge max. Simple math would suggest a BYD accepting a 1,000 kilowatt charge should be able to charge 4 times faster than a Model Y. But that is not how it works. Batteries are sensitive.
You're stuffing clothes into your washing machine at a very rapid pace, and it gets to almost full, and then you're still stuffing them very rapidly, and it deforms the washing machine itself. It's no longer able to spin in perfect circles. It gets bent out of shape, and all of a sudden the washing machine isn't working properly. This is exactly what happens with batteries.
An EV doesn't charge at maximum speed all the time. It's more like a curve that rises and falls. When you plug your car in, electricity starts flowing into the battery at a trickle, up to about that 10 or 20% mark. Then, from around that point to the 80% mark, charging speeds up, and at some point in there reaches the fastest speed the charger can provide and the battery can accept, say 350 kilowatts. That's the sweet spot. That is why you see companies advertise that their cars can charge from 10 or 20% to 80% in just 18 minutes or whatever. But even in this 20 to 80% range, it's still only charging at its maximum speed for a short time, and is mostly charging at least a slightly lower rate. After 80%, it slows back down to a trickle.
As the battery gets more and more full, over 80%, and you're still jamming energy in there, it tends to bend the structure of the cells itself. That could lead to a fire, that could lead to shortened life, that could lead to bad things happening.
There are some things you can do to mitigate this.
Did you do better cooling system, expensive cooling system? You use very expensive battery chemistry that is more resisting to it.
There is another wrinkle. Tal says data suggests the faster the charging speed, the sooner it has to slow down from its top speed.
It's not some kind of like a new silver bullet, a new kind of magic. Every higher power will be a little bit faster, but it's totally not linear. It's not that 1,000 is double than 500 and 4 times more than 250. It's just a little bit.
They went through enough examples. I believe the case that it's probably not 5 minutes. There's a good chance that they did some embellishing here. And also some of the things that they mentioned is that you wouldn't do this for safety purposes. It's also unclear the actual original source of this information. There might have been fine print that said this is in like a contained environment, not like in a real world use case where potentially those safety hazards could exist. So I believe from what they're saying, if I'm following this argument, that it is very unlikely that they truly hit 5 minutes for the average consumer and the usage of their vehicle. But again, I think going back to some of the things that I mentioned earlier, BYD is demolishing most of the electric vehicles in the market right now that even if they're embellishing this claim and they're just a little bit faster than everyone else, it still doesn't change things too much, at least from my understanding of the current market situation on electric vehicles.
Faster.
In order to make this work at its maximum potential, you need a charger that can even handle those speeds.
In terms of the rollout of that charging infrastructure, you have to put a lot of money and infrastructure in place even before those vehicles are being rolled out. BYD have announced that they're aiming to do 4,000 megawatt chargers in China, and that would help charge their own vehicles. But elsewhere, there isn't as much news on building out this dominant megawatt-hour charging infrastructure for passenger cars.
So in short, batteries have physical limitations. There are ways of compensating for them, but that means bigger batteries, which can increase weight and cost, or using expensive battery chemistry and cooling systems, which, again, increase cost. Then you need to build chargers that are capable of delivering that power, which is also technically challenging and expensive. That said, this is no vaporware. Tesla is frequently criticized for failing to deliver what it promises on schedule, or deliver at all. Lei Xing says BYD is different.
I'm a skeptic myself, to be honest. So, but given the history, given the BYD's talk about the technology fish pond, they will deliver. It's just a matter of time.
Setting aside the technical challenges, some say the business case for high-speed charging isn't as strong as it seems. Yes, being able to charge in as little time as it would to take to fill a gas tank is a breakthrough and will ease the anxiety many have about owning an electric car. BYD's entire mission all along has been to make EVs and high-tech features widely available at low cost. While it hasn't released any pricing information on its fast-charging technology, some say the costs could be substantial, at least initially.
Think of it as a premium offering for wealthy clients who are on the move and time is precious to them.
So it may cost more, and not everyone needs it at all times. The point here is, if charging is plentiful and you're just running errands, you won't want to or need to pay more for fast charging. You might, say, prefer to pay less for slower charging if you have to spend an hour in the grocery store anyway. But if you are in a rush, let's say a quick stop on a road trip, you may choose to use the fast charging.
Having these very fast chargers can be a really nice part of the portfolio, but not everyone needs them all the time.
BYD.
I think that's a good point, which is 5 minutes also seems like an arbitrary number. I think they probably just use that as reference towards gasoline fill-ups. But sometimes people go into like a convenience store nearby, grab a drink, use the restroom, something like that. And so not everybody is always going in exactly as efficiently as possible. And also, if it took you 10 minutes or 15 minutes, that might not be a huge issue for you. Maybe instead of you trying to do that before you head into work, for instance, maybe you do it on the way home instead, so you don't risk being late for your meeting or whatever it is. And so it's not necessarily a huge deal. And again, you could even go way slower and, like I said, have it many hours recharge just at your house, maybe overnight or something along those lines. So that way you never even really need to recharge while you're out if you're doing shorter trips. So I don't think this is necessarily going to be a tipping point for adoption of electric vehicles. I think the cost of ownership for electric vehicles, and I think them becoming cheaper than gas vehicles, is going to be a much more important factor, because once that happens, more and more people will buy them because it's more affordable, and then this will increase demand for electric charging, and then that will become more plentiful as well to keep pace with demand, and then it'll kind of keep building in on itself. But I think most people probably are purchasing cars out of necessity for their ability to get from point A to point B, and they would probably just as readily buy whatever is a cheaper option. And I doubt most people care too much about whether their car specifically uses gas or not, especially if they could get a more affordable vehicle.
He didn't respond to CNBC's request for an interview or comment. Regardless of how BYD's execution of this new breakthrough plays out, one thing is clear. BYD and its fellow Chinese automakers are pulling way ahead of global rivals. Signs everywhere show just how brutal China's EV market has become. Companies have been fighting a price war since at least the beginning of 2023, reportedly sparked by Tesla's price cuts in the country. A wave of bankruptcies and buyouts has swept across the sector. Competition has also produced a glut of supply, which has pushed these companies to increasingly seek markets outside China for export. This, in turn, has sparked fears in Europe and the US, among other places, about competition from low-cost and high-quality Chinese EVs. Under former President Biden, the US instituted 100% tariffs on Chinese import cars. Current President Trump slapped a separate 25% tariff on all imported cars and parts from any country. In addition, he said in 2024 he might double or even quintuple Biden's tariff on Chinese cars, including those built in Mexico. EU tariffs vary based on the amount of Chinese government support each manufacturer receives. Tariffs might buy some time, but global automakers are studying Chinese EVs and scrambling.
Yeah, I'm not surprised tariffs came up, especially because automotive tariffs are one of the key ones that are drawing attention nowadays. But tariffs are basically everywhere at this point in time, and they're always coming up in conversation and topics and the news just because this is probably going to be the key thing for the next few months still, even though it has been pretty prevalent in the last few months as well.
To respond, even taking some unusual measures. Ford CEO Jim Farley even took to daily driving a Xiaomi SU7, which he apparently loves.
If you ask me to say what we will see 10 years from now, we will see a US-made BYD. I'm not saying it's bad. If we're playing it right, it probably will have a different name on it, not BYD, Ford or GM.
Price is not the only arrow in the Chinese quiver. The unforgiving market has also fueled a ferocious culture of one-upmanship, where automakers are making big announcements and rolling out new models and features in a matter of weeks or months.
The big takeaway for me on BYD's announcement is that they now have 25,000 individual patents. They have 100,000 engineers working day and night to innovate, create new features. And this particular breakthrough is proven in the lab. It's not proven in production yet, but importantly, it tells the world China and BYD are moving from low cost to innovation.
It's not only BYD, it's the competition that's driving a part of this bloodbath of, look at me, I have the best-in-class technology. A few weeks and months later, someone else comes out with something even better. And that's what shocked the industry and myself.
The bottom line, expect more.
What BYD announced, it's only foreshadowing the things that have not announced. So I think that's scary in a way. Imagine 10 million NEVs globally. I think that's their aim. Now, is that going to be smooth sailing? No.
Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, please hit like or subscribe. I'll see you around.